This panel is the evolving energy consumer. Why is this important? In the energy world, the power is shifting to the customer's hands more and more decentralized, more digitalized, more connected. I think customers in communities and cities are shifting from customers to active partners in this system going forward, looking for new solutions. They're an integral part and will play a vital role to a sustainable energy future. I'd like to welcome our panelists, and thanks for being in New Brunswick with us today. We really appreciate that. And coming from Colorado, Drew and Patty from Atlanta, thank you. Patty Duran, President and CEO of the Smart Grid Consumer Collaborative. NB Power sits on their board. I have a seat on the board, and I'm glad to be there. Drew Sloan, Regional Vice President, Sales with Oracle. Anyway, welcome, and Patty, take it away.
And our mission is to advance a consumer-friendly and consumer-safe smart grid. And how do we do that? We do that by listening to consumers, by actually talking to consumers and asking them questions. We do that through on-camera interviews, through focus groups, through surveys, both phone and online. And we bring that information back to industry. So first off, we've done a segmentation framework that answers the question, who's out there, what do they want, and what do they know? And so about 30% of the US population are what we call green champions. This is the youngest demographic, and they have among the highest income despite their youth. They tend to be well educated, and they're early adopters of technology. They have high importance to smart grid benefits, especially as it relates to the ability to address greenhouse gases and scale up renewables. And in terms of opportunities for utilities, this segment is interested in pricing plans and new programs and devices that their utility might offer. The next largest segment are savings seekers. This group tends to have the lowest income and the highest percentage of low-income households. The next largest demographic are status quo. These people are relatively older with many retirees. They have an average size home, an average size bill, and they have very low awareness of smart grid or grid modernization. And the last group are what we call movers and shakers, what you might know of as early adopters. This group is working, college educated. They have the highest energy bill of any of those segments. They have the highest income also. And they attach very high interest in smart grid programs and technologies. We asked consumers to rank what they really care about when it comes to technology, and bill reduction is very high, as we would guess. Everyone cares about saving money, but then greater convenience is just as high. So don't leave here today thinking that consumers only want to save money and they don't care about anything else, because the research shows that's not the case. And then we did another piece of research. Michelle wanted me to talk about consumer interests related to electric vehicles and rooftop solar and community solar. We have a lot of data, and consumers are very interested in those technologies, as we know. And then there are barriers to solar, so the cost remains a barrier. The concern that the utility will control the solar, that will control the savings, is a barrier. And so those things can be addressed, some of which we've heard here in this conference, like on-bill financing or lease sharing arrangements. Electric vehicles are going to become the choice for many states, for city fleets, for college campus fleets, for things for places that don't want to emit carbon and want to save money, because electric vehicles are cheaper to drive per mile than a gas car, even at the rates that gas is right now. So with that, I'll wrap it up, and I look forward to your questions, and thank you very much.
We talk about what customers in the future are really going to want. The first thing they're going to want and they're going to expect is that their utility provides reliable service. So when we think about all the other things and where utilities are going and business models and how technology is going to impact that, we can't lose sight of the fact that when customers think about their utility, what they really want, first and foremost, is to make sure that when they flip that switch, that the lights come on. When you think about smart grid technologies, all the kind of things that are sort of baked into that, right now, smart grid's been on the market for a while. There are varying degrees in which customers have actually seen benefit from it, and so it's sort of in this trough phase. So it's not fully, like, people haven't really seen a lot of value out of it. And so excitement levels about it are down, and it's sort of kind of in the stage of adoption about halfway through. So what does this mean for the future of utilities? I think it means sort of an examination of sort of where the utility wants to go and how confident they are right now in their ability to get there. So taking a look at 360-degree view of the customer, right now when you think about where customer information sits and who can access it, the utilities actually have quite a bit. So start targeting those customers, but really kind of taking that 360-degree view of the customer and provide insights designed to target exactly what a utility wants. All these touch points that a utility already has with their customers, make it to where the people that are behind those touch points actually have information that's relevant to a customer. So when someone calls the call center, work on sort of what the next best action is going to be. And the CSR can say, you've got high usage. We've got a plan for you. We've got an offer for you. That's the kind of things that start shifting conversations from my bill is really high to my utility actually has solutions for me, and starts engaging customers and moving them down this path where they start seeing the utility as an ally and helping them make smarter energy choices.
We've got all these wonderful solutions coming, and we get all excited about them. So how are we doing, and what do we need to do to bridge that gap?
So we know people want to save money. We know they want to have cleaner energy. We know they think technology is cool. So give them solutions. And what I don't see happening much, although this is shifting, is good messaging, good marketing, communications to consumers.
The more things you can do, and this isn't really technologies, it's a lot of things they're like, the more things that you can make opt out, the better you're going to be. Because one of the challenges with any program is that it's just hard to get people enrolled.
Let's talk a little bit about utilities, energy service providers, and shifting cultures. What needs to happen to get to that marketing and sales approach?
Yeah, there's a saying that I heard recently by Peter Drucker, who said, culture eats strategy for lunch. And what that means is you can have a good strategy, you can even have good solutions, but if your culture doesn't innovate and doesn't transform, then the rest of it isn't going to matter. The strategy is just going to sit in a book on a shelf.
When you think back to the core mission of a utility, being around reliability, the whole ecosystem is set up to ensure that there's reliable power, and that power costs a price that most consumers can pay, and if not, there are programs put in place from the government level to help customers pay for that. And that's all a very, very good thing, and has allowed, at least the North American economies to the vibrancy that they have. The challenge becomes as utilities start to shift and be more innovative. At the moment, innovative stops becoming just a buzzword and actually becomes reality. There's a lot more risk that goes along with that. It's very hard to be innovative if you're not going to tolerate failure, if you're not going to tolerate some customer criticism or complaints. And right now, the utilities are designed, and the ecosystem is designed to make sure that everyone is happy. And if they're not happy, then you're going to have to explain why they're not happy and the steps you're taking to make them happy. And that's a real challenge because, again, as you start to innovate and as you start to get in customers' homes, you're going to find that not everyone is happy with the experience. And these are things that every other business that sells directly to customers, or probably any business actually, understands.
We've got 40 people from across the company represented on this, and it's a guiding coalition to the future. How do we shift the culture faster? It's a network pulled out of silos, and it's really, really powerful. Anyway, having said that, millennials and shifting value sets and what that really means they seem to digital, always on, always connected, what that means going forward.
We have typically discouraged looking at people as a demographic. Once we had done enough studies on consumer segmentation and understood that values cross demographics, just because you're wealthy doesn't mean you don't care about saving money. Just because you're poor doesn't mean you don't care about the environment and climate change. But millennials are different. I think the term I've heard as their coming tsunami. They are always on. They're digital natives. They've never not had connectivity. They've never not had 24/7.
We're going to take it to the floor for questions. I think there's probably a few.
Why don't you think of wood pellets for heating to save money and save emission at the same time? Is that something that the utility should look at?
I think at the end of the day, and Theo, thanks for the question. At the end of the day, customers are going to personalize their energy experience, and they're going to choose the solutions that they feel meet their values best. That might be wood. It might be electricity. I think it'll be what customers value, and I think policies need to evolve to do the right things going forward. But at the end of the day, I think if these offerings are attractive enough, customers will choose, and they'll choose their solutions going forward. And that's what we firmly believe. The question is, how do we continue to evolve? And alternate fuels can be a good complement to the future, right? To sustainability, and I think they will be. And some communities will go to biomass, and should.
So my question, and I apologize if this creates an awkward moment on the stage. For our panelists, how do you get a utility to embrace the complexity of their marketplace? Because there are stakeholders in New Brunswick, I think, that have a stake in NB Power's choices. And those are people that absorb the negative externalities of your environmental decisions, for example. And I'm curious how we can get the utility to embrace a more complex vision of the consumer.
I don't know exactly the regulatory history of NB Power, but I know in the United States, utilities are constrained by the regulatory environment. And in the US, every utility is underway with amazing changes to the renewable portfolio, with coal dropping every year precipitously compared to increases in natural gas as a bridge fuel, and now wind and solar as a competitive fuel source that's at grid parity.
You're starting to see a lot of utilities, and I would rank NB Power up there, that are thinking differently, that are trying to figure out what is going to make their business succeed in the next 2 years, next 5 years, next 10 years, and that's leading to a lot of change. And I think a lot of it's smart meters are a big step forward in that, because they open up the door. Like I said, they are the ticket that allows you to get on the bus to those different business models.
In terms of consumers, do you have any strategies for consumers, electricity consumers, that don't actually pay for their electricity consumption? So specifically renters and low-income people that have subsidized housing.
I'm unfamiliar with low-income people and renters not receiving electricity bills. Everyone gets a bill in the US. Do people here not get bills?
You can buy, I think you can rent an apartment and that bill is paid, like utilities included.
It's very rare.
There's some of that in Canada,
yeah.
where in an apartment block, your
Right.
bill's paid en masse, and it's really hard to motivate people, perhaps, to be, whether you're in a common mall
Yeah.
space or an apartment. That's really what you're referring
I think
to.
in terms of low-income people receiving assistance, I think something of the number of eligible people that receive assistance is something like 20%. So 80% of people in the US are eligible for low-income assistance, like LIHEAP. That's an acronym for Low-Income Assistance Program. Only 20% that are eligible get it. And of those 20%, it only covers a part of a bill.
Title of the panel today is Accelerating Energy Innovation, and we have three participants in our moderated discussion. We have Natika Sate, Director of Emerging Technologies, Electra Energy Solutions, Mark DeVere-White, President, Electricity Itron, and Gaetan Thomas, President and CEO of NB Power. So it's going to be an exciting conversation. I think this one is a bit more forward-thinking and seeing how things fit from the perspective of CEOs and leaders, in a sense. And that's why it's interesting for our first question, which will go in order, is if you could just give us a brief statement or comment on where do you think the energy business is going?
Our industry has not changed over a century. Someone came from many 100 years ago would still recognize the single line diagrams. That's going to change. We are facing a generational disruption in the world of electricity, and not just electricity, in the world of energy. There is a blurred line, severely blurred lines between transportation, heat, and electricity use. The truth is that moving electrons is a lot harder, needs to be a lot safer than some of the other industries like telecommunication or your video and music industry did not have to face those extra hurdles to be taken care of. But the truth is the customers have the same expectations from the electricity, from the energy sector, as they have from any other industry. They want the same real-time, rich experience that empowers their lifestyle on a second-by-second basis.
I think the energy industry is facing sort of 4 trends that you can see across many verticals, but they're having a tough time dealing with them and knowing how fast to move. The first one is obviously the Internet of Things. You mentioned that as well. The second big trend is distributed energy resources, and which really just drives a ton of grid modernization costs and expense. And the faster it comes, the more difficult it is for the utilities themselves. With consumers wanting to participate in selling energy back to the grid, but having less of the commodity, that's another challenge to the current structure without the right policy rates, incentives. And then there's also another thing where if you're a regulated utility and you put in a network, let's say it's for smart metering, it could be for distribution automation, but then you decide that you could use that network to provide a city with services so that they don't have to have the capital expense of the infrastructure. How does that economic model work when the ratepayer paid for that infrastructure, now the utility is making money from it?
There's a commonality between electricity and communication that is quite remarkable. Speed of light, speed of electrons. They have no color. They don't know if they're nuclear, or they don't know if they're cold. They don't know if they're green. But they're all working on the same grid today. And there is one common element that I want to emphasize. The importance of the grid is more critical than ever today. You can do any transactions anywhere from the world. I can shut and on and off my lights, my water heater from California. I did it from Washington. I spooked my wife because that was a program from last week. I shut it off for her from Washington. So you can do everything because of technology. And what we do know is what we used to predict would take 5 to 10 years. I wouldn't even bet on that. I'm convinced with Moore's Law, with the 3 converging factors. One is the solar. Solar is going down. In Mexico, it's beating any other nuclear, coal, you name it, gas. They have a better sun regime than we have here, but still, the come a day that solar will be the cheapest option. And then you combine with the evolution of storage. And this is why Elon Musk went to the vehicle, to the home wall units. He figured he couldn't sell enough luxury cars to create volumes. So he decided there's more homes than there are luxury cars owner. So now suddenly he's accelerating the cost of storage, really at the right level. So within 5, 6 years, you could have electric vehicles that will cost less than $25,000. I guarantee there will be no need for incentives to buy an electric vehicle 5 to 6 years from now.
A great segue to the next question, which is about the pace of innovation in a highly regulated industry.
The barriers are as much psychological as they are real. So a lot of LDCs, and you would know this about the utility industry, we all like to be first to be third. We are typically, traditionally nurtured and groomed and mentored to be risk averse. It's all about safety. It's all about making sure you're always there for the customer, so you don't make no mistakes and make sure you always deliver safe, secure, reliable power. That's how the industry has been groomed for generations, decades. And now with all this change happening, we're expecting this industry to turn around completely and become innovative.
Well, I think on the regulatory side, I think we are limiting ourselves because we're trying to play by certain rules. And I think it's beyond the regulator. I think we have to look at the policies. And again, we've changed our rule of hockey here. We're removing the boards. We're spreading the ice. We're getting more players on the ice. So trying to regulate it in a box behind or from the is part of the issue. So we have to really imagine it differently. And then once we try to visualize that new future, then I think we can have a better discussion with the regulator. And sometimes it starts with on a public utility like New Brunswick Power, and many Canadian, half the Canadian utilities are publicly owned. We have to start with policy direction.
I think the bigger, more important thing is you have to have a belief that there will be a standards-based infrastructure and that you don't have to create it all yourself. You as a vendor to customers, you as a utility purchasing your grid asset devices, but also being able to collaborate with the local municipality to have fire and safety and street lights and parking and these other applications. And unless we get to common standards, it's just you spend more time trying to keep yourself interoperating than you do trying to create value.
So I thought in the remaining time, I'd just pose the general question again in case you haven't had a chance to make a particular point or takeaway you would like to give to the audience. Just if you were to give advice, say, to a policymaker, a decision maker, what could they do to help spur innovation in a highly regulated industry?
Years ago, I worked in the telecommunications software industry. And nascent Sunrise, this is at the time when internet was just about being born. So I've ridden the wave of the internet boom. Every company in that industry kept aside X% of their money for R&D, because if you did not innovate, you could not move on. So it was survival of the fittest. We don't have that mentality in the utilities. It's more about how do you get the rates down today, how do you appease the customers today with safe, reliable, and low-cost power. All of that is great, but there needs to be a policy to keep certain percentage aside to look about tomorrow, 5 years down.
I think that, one, we need to look at how we're financing these deals so that we can not rely on a 20-year rate of return in the technology cycle that's just faster than that. One of the ways we can do that is to actually accelerate innovation. If we're using standards and as they become more ubiquitous, there's a lot of cases where everybody's doing their own little pilots and their trials and lots of money is spent, and then it takes a while to get to scale. So if we get more scale, the economic efficiency of the model will work a lot better.
What you need to spur innovation is people investing, believing in people and innovators, and giving them a chance to fail and fail fast and learn fast. And that doesn't occur in an environment where you try to regulate. I find that the more you regulate, the more you stymie innovation. I think regulation is there for standards, for security. Obviously, we want to make sure that we control, like for instance, if you're going to get into hydrogen or if you're going to get into even, high voltage, you've got to have regulations and standards. But to me, less regulation and having people understanding that the people that are going to be the most successful in the future are going to be the people that promote more innovation. And that means that there will be some startups that you will be associated with that fail.